It's breathtaking. Come into Aish, the two things they always first ask for, what would you say they are? What? Water. Okay. Usually we have what? Bathroom, that's the one, and Wi-Fi. Right? That's what people want to know. Like, Aish is an international Jewish organization where our mission is to connect Jews all over the world to see the beauty and relevance of Judaism. We do that through this building where we have thousands and thousands of people coming through. We have a full-time school next door. Online, we reach millions of people. We have branches all over the world. But the goal in all of these places is to help people who maybe didn't see Judaism as being relevant into their lives to really see that it can be relevant and meaningful. And that's what we do all over the world. This is a special place. We take it's a big responsibility to have a location right across from the Western Wall. But we take that responsibility very seriously, and we try to do it to try to inspire and reach as many have. This is Dale Chihuly is an American glass artist, one of the most famous in the world. He has commissioned art all over the place, and we had a supporter who commissioned this piece for Aish. And so then I asked people, what do you think it is?
The octopus.
The octopus, yeah, get that a lot?
613 Mitzvot.
Oh, I never heard that. That's nice. Did you count it that quickly?
Yeah.
I heard this past week someone said, what is it, Medusa? Is that her name?
Oh, yeah.
Medusa with the
Medusa,
hair,
yeah.
right? Some people say, what else? Any other thoughts? Fire.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Pretty gross.
Fire.
Colors.
Oh, is that? So that's the punchline. But a lot of people say they see shofars, whatever. So everyone, it's good. Let people guess what it is.
The colors, the fire is going into Judaism.
Oh,
The blue.
beautiful.
It's like
So
taking us-
what this is based on the story of one of the most famous rabbis in the Talmud, which is Rabbi Akiva, right? So Rabbi Akiva, and what made Rabbi Akiva so famous and why he's so special to Aish is that Rabbi Akiva didn't study any Judaism until he was 40 years old, right? And so he grew up really as an ignoramus, someone who was not connected to his Judaism. And the Talmud tells a story that one day he was walking in the forest and he saw water dripping into a rock, right? And he saw that there was a hole being made in the rock. And he stopped because he was perplexed. How can water, which is soft, make a hole in a rock, which is something that's hard? And the Talmud says that he said to himself, if water, which is soft, can make a hole in a rock, which is hard, then the fire of the Torah, the Aish HaTorah, can certainly penetrate a person's heart, right? And he had this sort of epiphany that, you know what, maybe I thought all this time, okay, like all of us, we want to be great, we want to be the CEO, we want to be the great rabbi, but we want to do it overnight. Rabbi Weinberg used to say, everyone wants to be Mashiach, right? But they want to be Mashiach overnight, and they want to sleep that night, right? So it's very true, right? We all want to be, but he realized it's just drop by drop by drop, that if you're persistent and if you stick to it, right, that it's something that can change our lives and can change who we are, and that's the power of Torah. And he changed his life. He became Rabbi Akiva, right? As we know, he had 24,000 students who eventually then had additional students who were the ones who we really pass all of the Torah down through. And so that's where this name comes from. The fire of the Torah, Aish HaTorah, right? This is the fire coming down, then turning into the water, right? That was going into the rock. And so Rabbi Weinberg started Aish 50 years ago. He felt that because Rabbi Akiva was someone who later in life, right, came. And that's really what Aish is about. Because most people who come through this building, most people who study at Aish, they didn't have the opportunity to have a Jewish education. They didn't, like I said downstairs, what we really focus on, most of them did not grow up with a Jewish education. And now later in life are finding that it's something they connect to. And then it's never too late, right? It's never too late. So many people, I usually give an anecdote that, I actually was for a while studying with a very successful business person. And he was in his 50s. And he was very hard on himself. And he often would say to me, I wish I had this 20 years ago. I wish I had this 30 years ago. I missed so much time. I'm in my 50s now. And I would say to him, I'd say, Jonathan, you know what someone in their 70s is saying? I wish I had this 20 years ago, right? I wish I had this, when So we're all in the place that we're at, right? And we get introduced to Judaism whenever that time is. The question is, are we going to be like Rabbi Akiva and recognize, okay, we can jump in drop by drop, right? We can, it's never too late, and drop by drop can really change us and can change our families, and every step that we take, whether it's studying more, whether it's doing a mitzvah, can make a big difference. So that's this, yeah? Aish HaTorah, right? What is the fire of the Torah? So the fire of the Torah, like, what does that mean? But he says, what is fire? Fire is energy. Fire is power, right? Fire is, you put energy in the car, that's what makes it run, right? So the Torah, which is instructions for life, fire is the energy, the power that gives us the energy to bring the wisdom of life into the world. That's really what the Aish Torah stands for, is giving us the energy and the power and the excitement and the simcha in order to bring wisdom into the world, and that's what Aish is about. So we want them to walk away with, right, in my mind, is what was that place really about, right? What did it represent? Why is it so important to the Jewish people, right? It's not just a bunch of rocks, right? What was that place? And at the end of the day, the way I try to, and we'll talk about when we get up there, is really based around the idea of Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, right? From Zion, the Torah comes out. That this was the place where the values and the morals that the Jewish people stand for would come out to the world, and it's a great tie-in because that's what Aish is about, right? And that's really the punchline of what I'm trying to get to up there. If you find interesting and you want to point out to me, for example, I just found out this last week that the entire platform of the Temple Mount, right, fit 21 football fields. That's how big it was. That's super cool, right? Now, does it really matter? Wow, it's still amazing. Wow. Yeah. Still amazing. This place is everyone, like the world is focused on this place. And when I say that, I don't mean just the Jewish people, right? This is the holiest place in the world for the Jews, but all you have to do is look around and you see mosques and you see churches, right? The world is focused on this place, right? So the question is why? Why, literally at a certain time of day, right? You could see all kinds of Jews going to the Western Wall to pray. You could hear church bells. You could hear the calls of the prayer, the Muslims. Like, why is this the place that politically, religiously, right, the world is focused on? And so I start by saying, Judaism believes that we've had a connection to this place for thousands and thousands of years, right? Maybe you've heard the story of Abraham and Isaac, the binding of Isaac, right, where Abraham took his son up. We believe it happened in this place, right? And God told him to sacrifice his son. Don't worry. The last minute he told him not to, right? But it's a powerful idea because why? What was happening there? How could it be that God wanted Abraham to kill his own son, right? Now he didn't. He told him not to, but it was teaching us this profound idea that there are certain things in life worth dying for, right? There are certain ideas worth dying for. Judaism, by the way, says don't die for them, live for them. But every person has to know what they're willing to give their life for, right? Because it's, right, how can a mother send her child out to war, right? She doesn't like her child? No, because she's saying there's certain things worth giving our lives for. So that's one of the first things we learned at this place. And the Torah and Judaism, right? If you heard Jacob's ladder, we believe that happened here. And so this really, while this for right, centuries and centuries, really millennia, this was a center focus for the Jewish people. Now, eventually, when the Jews came into the land of Israel, they were here for hundreds of years, and they came and made this as their capital, right? Anyone know who was the first person who came here to make this the capital of the Jewish people?
David.
King David, right? Down strong, very good. Down by Silwan, which was the original city of David. And you could point out, you can see the city of David down there, and that was the point where King David came to build his capital. But David himself didn't build the temple, right? It was his son, King Solomon, who built it. We believe that it was built almost 3,000 years ago. I think it was like 983 or something like that was the year. It stood for about 400 years. It was then destroyed by, anyone know who?
Nebuchadnezzar.
That's you.
No, the Babylonians.
Yeah,
the Babylonians, right? Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple. It was actually that temple it was destroyed by the Babylonians. The Jews were exiled to Persia. That's where the story of Purim happened. They were only there actually for about 70 years. And King Cyrus the Great declared that the Jews could return back to the land of Israel and build the second temple. And they built the second temple. A couple hundred years after that, Herod, right? Herod the Great, King Herod came and really did a renovation that built the second temple into an amazing place. Now, especially the first temple that King Solomon built was an archaeological feat, right? It was an unbelievable, people from all over the world came to see it. They were quarrying stones that we still don't know today how they got the stones to this place. There are stones that are 500 tons, right, that they were able to bring and became the foundation of the temple area. And if you go down into the Western Wall tunnels, right, you can actually still see some of those stones. And they brought, trees and wood from Lebanon, and they brought gold and copper and all kinds, the finest of the finest. Like I said, it was a place that people came from all over the world to see. But what made the temple special was not just its architectural greatness, is what it stood for, right? What it stood for. And so we believe in Judaism, our tradition tells us that there were literally open miracles that were happening in the temple. Now, I personally then tell people 3 open miracles two. I tell them 2 open miracles and then another fact about the temple. So I like to tell people 2 miracles, but the reason I give these miracles is because there's a message behind them, right? So the first miracle I tell people is that, the Talmud describes how 3 times a year, the Jewish people were commanded to come to this place. Now, why would there be a commandment to come to this place? Why would you think the Torah tells the Jewish people 3 times a year they have to come here?
I think it's stay connected.
Yeah, they come here, be inspired, come see the miracles, feel God's presence, be unified with the Jewish people, and then go back to your homes. So you can imagine when everyone was coming here at the same time, and they would all go up in the temple, it'd be incredibly crowded, right? The Talmud describes, like, anyone ever been here on the New York City subway, like at rush hour, right? So the Talmud describes that it was so crowded that people's feet would not touch the ground. Right? They were literally being carried because there was nowhere to stand. But at the moment in the prayers where every person was commanded to do a full prostration on the ground, the Talmud says there was room for everyone. It was a miracle, right? Open miracle. So what does that mean? So the idea behind that is that in the physical world, there's limited resources. There's limited space, right? You have your car, I can't have it. You have your watch, I can't have it, right? But in the spiritual world, there's room for everyone, right? We can share wisdom, we can share spirituality. Just because I have it doesn't mean that you can't. In fact, that is the idea of spirituality, that we can share it with each other, right? So that's one idea. So the second miracle that I like to talk about is the Talmud also says that the flames on the Mizbeach never were extinguished, right? Even when it was raining, even when it was, I don't know if it snowed, maybe we've seen, I don't know, you guys ever been here when it snowed? I was there a couple times. But even when it was raining, right, the fires of the Mizbeach would never get extinguished. And the Talmud also says that's a miracle, right? So what's the idea there? The idea there is that fire and water, which are polar opposites, when they can come together for a higher purpose, to serve spirituality, to serve God, they can coexist and they can come together. That was the idea. But one of my favorite facts about the temple, and I use this now as my segue into what I was talking about before, what's the real purpose of this place. One of my favorite facts or tidbits about the temple is, I always say, anyone here an architect? Right? There's always one person, maybe. Oh, no, okay, good. So I can say whatever I want, right? So I'd say, but people get it, right? If you're building a house and you want to have a lot of natural light in the house, what do? So you can build a window that is very narrow on the outside and wide on the inside, so a little light will come in and then it'll spread inside the house, right? In the temple, the windows were built the opposite way. They were narrow on the inside and wide on the outside. Why? Why would they build it that way?
The light out.
Right. So the Talmud says, God says, I don't need the light from the outside, right? Meaning what? The light from the inside was so powerful that we wanted it to spread out to the world. So what was that light, right? What was that thing that we wanted to spread to the world? So then the temple stood right here, right? And this was the place, the dome that you see here in Judaism, in some ways we're actually happy that they built it here. because it actually allowed us to keep our tradition that we believe that they built it right on the place where the temple stood, right? This is a huge area of the Temple Mount. When King Solomon came to build the temple, this was a mountain. It's hard to build a big structure on a mountain. So the first thing he did is he created a huge plaza, right? A plaza, he basically leveled the top of the mountain. It was so big, like I mentioned before, you could fit 21 football fields up there. And then he put the temple in the middle. But how do we know exactly where it was? So our tradition tells us right where that dome is standing is where the temple stood. Now the temple faced to the eastern side. So we would actually be standing looking at the back of the temple right now, right? But the way that the temple stood, let's say this is the back where we're standing here, the Holy of Holies, the most holy place in the temple, stood at the back of the temple. So even though right now we'd be facing the back, we would be to the closest as you possibly could get to that Holy of Holies, right? And what was in the Holy of Holies? Anyone know what was in the Holy of Holies?
Broken tablets, the tablets,
Yeah.
manna.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay. Very good. But the core of what was in the Holy of Holies was the Aron, the Ark, right?
Yeah, but that was in.
Exactly. And what was in the
tablets.
Aron? Like you said, the
Tablets.
tablets. So what are the tablets? The tablets of the Torah.
Isn't there one other thing in there?
The staff, Moshe's staff, right? But this is all first temple. The second temple, we didn't have those things, but I don't have to get into that. Right? But the light, when the Torah says about the light coming out of the temple, it was talking about the light of the Torah, the Holy of Holies, the holiest place in the temple. And in the Ark, and in the place that was most protected, was the Torah. And what does that mean? The light of the Torah going out. It means the values and the morals of the Torah, right? That it was what we wanted to share with the world. That was what was coming out from this place. There's this idea called Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, from Zion, which is this mountain. The Torah will come out and it will be spread to the world, right? And I once had a group, and they were a group of donors from UJA that were here, and it just popped in my head, and I love this line. Always the time I say, Aish, it's a big responsibility to have a place like this, right? Because you can't be in a place like this and not be thinking about how can we use it really to make an impact on the Jewish people and make an impact on the world. And so the idea that Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, that the values and the morals that would go out to the world, that's what Aish is about. And whether, again, it's people coming through this building, whether it's people online, it's an opportunity to talk a little bit about the things that Aish are doing. Now, I don't remember if I mentioned last time also, I talk a little bit about the values. What are the values, right? And are you guys familiar with the class World Perfect? You have like Ken Spiro, he wrote a book called World Perfect. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Part of this tour and nothing to do with this tour. Basically, he wrote a book where he takes 6 values, core values of Judaism, and their values that he shows basically in the ancient world. None of these values didn't really exist, but the world now basically accepts these values because of Judaism. So for example, I'll just give one, and I talk about it up here. I explain these values, because when you say there's a light shining out, what does that mean to people? They don't know what it means. You have to make it tangible to people, right? So one of the things, for example, he talks about is the value of life, right? So in the ancient world, today we take it for granted, right? Like there's a value of life. Every human being, has a right to live, right? The Declaration, not the Constitution, right? That every person is created in the image of God. If you go back in the ancient world, the Aztecs, they used to go into battle with non-lethal weapons, because they would want to try to capture as many captives they could in order to sacrifice them to the gods. Or you go to the Colosseum, right, in Rome, where it's an amazing spectacle. If you go there, I always joke. I tell people, I like sports. You take your kid to a sports game or something. Imagine back in Rome, a father would take his 7, 8-year-olds to the Colosseum, and in one day he would literally watch 100 people getting mauled by lions and bears, or getting killed by gladiators, right? This was the ancient world, and generally there was infanticide, right? Killing children. Generally, it was girls, by the way, because they didn't help, in the fields, whatever it is. So it was common in the ancient world, right, that if you weren't in the right class, if you weren't in the right power, your life was basically not worth very much. The Jewish people came along and said every person is created in the image of God. And there's a few different ones, equality under the law. I talk a lot about, the idea that, people think equality and these things or people's rights is a lot of it, or democracy came from the Greeks. But you have to read the book, but he talks about, in Greece, who were the people who could vote? Who were the people who had a say? Men who own land. There's a small people, right? Where in Judaism, while Judaism has a different system, but everyone is under the law, right? So you talk about how the king had to carry a Sefer Torah, because even the king, there was something above him, right? Nobody was above the law. Whether it's education, all different values. So the last thing I also talk about up here is I try to also bring it that the idea, the last point after we've talked about the values that come out of here, is that this is not just something that happened thousands of years ago. The Jewish people still today, every day, we still think about this place, right? And I go through some of the customs and some of the things that apply today that we basically do to remind ourselves that this place, right, was a holy place and that it's missing. Whether the fact that we pray towards this location, the idea under a wedding canopy, we break the glass, whether sometimes you go into people's homes and there's an unfinished part of their home that you'll see when you walk in to remember the Beis Hamikdash. And it's pretty amazing how much part of our lives today are about that. And then, I always end with the story of Napoleon, right? Which is not probably a true story, but it's okay. I usually preface it with that. It's not very clear if this is a true story or not, but it's a powerful story. You guys all know the story of Napoleon. I don't have to say it. So they say the story that Napoleon was walking through the streets of France, and he walked by a synagogue, and the Jews were on the floor crying. And so he asked his advisors, "Why are the Jews crying?" And they said to him, "Well, because their temple was destroyed." He says, "Their temple was destroyed? Nobody told me their temple was destroyed." He said, No, it was destroyed like 2,000 years ago. And supposedly Napoleon said, if there's a people who are still crying that their temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago, then it's guaranteed that they're going to see it rebuilt, right? So again, is that a true story or not true? But the idea is that we pray every day that this place should be rebuilt, not because it's a building, not because, it's a place of power, it's because this is a place of spirituality. This is where the values that we talked about come out of. And so we're praying every day that all the problems in the world should be solved. Why? Because it's based on the values and the morals that will come out of this place, and that is the Jewish people's job and role to do that. And this is the last stop, is called the Hall of Notes, where we talk about, it's called the Hall of Notes, you'll see when we walk in, because everyone has an opportunity to write a note before they go to the hotel. And there's the door on floor 0 that goes out. So not every group works out that way, but I usually encourage groups, come here before you go to the hotel, because then we'll give you like background, but it will help you be prepared to go there, and you can write notes, and then they go out. Not all groups do that, but it's a nice sort of ending. Then they go right out to the hotel with their notes. It's okay, this is our room, the Hall of Notes. You're about to go out to the Western Wall. You're going to have a chance in a minute to even write a note, but before we go out there, I'm just going to show you a video about the power of the Western Wall. You guys want to see it? Aish Israel spoke this? No. No one knows that they think this is Aish Israel.
המשמעות של הקודש זה שכאן יושב השכינה.
A place where everyone can come and, unite.
Le symbole en fait du mur, c'est le rassemblement de la foi de tous les gens dans le monde. A focal point.
It encapsulates everything that we stand for as Jews.
If those walls can talk, they talk about shared pain and anguish and successes of 3,500 years. That's the Kotel.
In the place where Abraham and Isaac walked, where Jacob dreamed of the angels on the ladder, where Judaism says the physical world and spiritual world meet, the people of Israel, under the leadership of King Solomon, built Jerusalem and the temple. In ancient times, the temple was considered a rare and outstanding architectural feat. This site attracted people from all over the known world. In the midst of a pagan culture of idol worship and human sacrifice, the Jews in Israel introduced a new spiritual reality. The temple stood for justice, honesty, brotherhood, loving kindness, and forgiveness. Over the centuries, sovereignty over Jerusalem passed from the Jews to Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, Christians, and Muslims. The temple was destroyed twice, leaving only the Western Wall as a remnant and memorial of its glorious past. Finally, after 2,000 years of exile, years of suffering, hardships, and yearning, Jerusalem returned to Jewish sovereignty.
אני עובד ברגע זה אני עובד במדרגות אל הכותל. אינני אדם דתי, מעולם לא הייתי, אבל זהו הכותל, ואני נוגע באבני הכותל המערבי.
Our faith and what we believe in. This land that everyone has been waiting so long for.
Formons une chaîne, chaque juif est un maillon, et ensemble on peut faire quelque chose.
יום שישי היינו שבת פה בהר הזיתים עם גדוד של צוערים מבה"ד 1, בית ספר לקצינים של צה"ל, וביום שישי ככה שעות אחר הצהריים מאוחרות ירדנו לקראת שבת לכותל, לקבלת שבת, קצת ריקוד, עשינו מעגל ענק על כל הרחבה, 284 צוערים, מפקצים, מ"פים, כל הגדוד. רוקדים ככה, עם ישראל חי, מעגל ענק. אז מתקבצים פנימה, עוד ככה כמה שירים, שבחי ירושלים, כל העולם כולו, שרים, 20 דקות רוקדים, ואז ככה מי שרצה נשאר לתפילה, מי שרצה הלך לסיור. זה שבת שעשינו סיכום של כל השבת. קמו צוערים, סיכמו כל אחד מהזווית שלו. כמעט אחרון קם צוער, אמר, שבוע טוב, לי קוראים עווד, אני דרוזי מכפר ירכא שבגליל, גדוד חרב. ואני, שאלו אותי כל הזמן אחר מהצוות, איך אתה מרגיש פה שבת של יהודים, בכל זאת, ירושלים, אמרת? ולא עניתי לכם, עכשיו אני אענה לכם. פה לפני כולם. זה היה השבת הכי מדהימה בחיים שלי. אבל הרגע הכי מדהים בשבת היה לראות אתכם רוקדים בכותל. אמרתי, הסתכלתי. חילונים, ספרדים, אשכנזים, עולים חדשים, ותיקים, ימין, שמאל, חרדים שהצטרפו למעגל ככה מהמתפללים. פתאום הבנתי, מה זאת הכוח שלכם? שאתם ביחד, אף אחד לא יוכל. ואת הכוח הזה אתם מקים מפה. ירושלים, מהכותל.
So I say, the Western Wall, people are going down the Western Wall. You go down there, a lot of people go down, they don't know what they're supposed to do there. But it's like we talked about, this is the place we're getting the closest we can to the Holy of Holies, to the place where people would come to offer their prayers that have open miracles. And so it's an opportunity to really go down and to pray. And so I say, I just want to share one idea about prayer. And you can come up, there's different ideas you can come up with. I like to share the idea, which is actually any of you guys who are in the afternoon, the 3:10 series that we just did and what I was talking about, or you guys heard it because I taught this with the Kollel guys, is I like to talk about the idea that God doesn't need our prayers, right? So I'll say to people, Judaism, we believe God is great, God is perfect, God doesn't need anything, right? And yet you open up a prayer book and we have to tell God how great he is and how powerful he is and how amazing he is, right? So either this God has a big ego, right? Or there's something else going on, right? So if God doesn't need us to tell him how great he is, why does he tell us to keep telling him how great he is? If it's not for him, it's for us, right? And so Judaism believes that prayer is not for God. God doesn't need us to pray. He's giving us an opportunity to pray. It's for us. And so prayer is really about what do we want to pray for? What really speaks to us? What is that thing that, in the depths of our soul, in the depths of our heart, we really are yearning for, right? That's what prayer is for, to be real, to really, to get down deep, and I think I put it in here, but I like, there's a joke that there was a mother and a daughter in a car, and they were driving to a bowling alley, and an ambulance came by them. So the mother looks at the little girl and says, we should pray. So the girl is silent for a few seconds, and then she says, sorry, punchline of a joke, you get a phone call. She says to her mother, she says out loud, God, please make it so the ambulance doesn't block the bowling alley, right? So I love that joke because it's real, right? Her prayer was real, right? That's what she really cared about, meaning our prayers often define what's most important to us. And so there's an opportunity for us to pray. And so there's become a custom over the last couple, whatever it's been, thousands of years now. Today it's easy. You get on a plane. Maybe it's a little more expensive than it used to be. You get on a plane, you have some wine, you have a nice meal, you watch a movie, you fall asleep. Next thing you know, you're in Israel, right? For the last 2,000 years, our ancestors, right? They wished they could come here, right? Very few were able to, on donkeys, on this, on that, but they prayed. Became a custom when people were able to come to Israel, and people knew that this is where their prayers would go up, that they would write notes and send it with people, saying, take my notes to Jerusalem. And that's where this custom came of writing notes and bringing notes into the Kotel. So in a minute, we have an opportunity if anyone wants to write a note and take them with them. But before we do that, I'm going to show you one last video about our prayers in the Western Wall. Okay? So you guys, I think I just invite people, if you like to write a note, take a few minutes, write something before you head out to the Kotel. Yeah.